Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Father Hans.
Good morning, Deacon Brett. Sorry to pull you out of bed at this early hour.
Yes, I would usually be taking my nap now, so I want you to know this is a sacrifice.
Your nap? You mean you already have been awake for a little while?
I would have woken up at 9 and had breakfast and a cup of coffee and then go back to bed for my nap. That's a lot of work.
You've heard the definition of a monk before.
What's the definition of
A monk gets up at 4 o'clock twice a day.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. That's good.
Well, here we go. First time with the three of us together. So we're trying it in the conference room here today so we could all fit on the screen. We're still fussing with a few pieces here. I don't know what these flicks are. Do you know what those flicks are there, Mr. Hans?
I don't know. Does it say that we're live? It says we're live and there's people watching us.
Somebody said good morning.
It's flicking around.
It is flicking a little bit. I don't know why. Brett, are you making it flick?
Having here is doing it.
It's my electric personality.
What's going on?
What can we do that? Anyway, it's the movement thing, isn't it?
I don't know.
So we freeze. Let's freeze our motion for a moment. Don't
stop moving.
I need coffee.
You need coffee?
I need coffee. I can't get mine.
So,
Boy, it's still flicking even with no gross movement.
well, I'm trying to find the live video and I'm not finding it. This is not us. This is other stuff. Have some coffee.
Let me just back out of the picture for a minute and see if that's it. It's delayed, isn't it? Wow. For me to get off screen.
Oh, yes. It's always
Couple
delayed by at
seconds.
least 5 seconds or so.
Let's see if that stops the jerking.
Holy Trinity Catholic Church. No, it's not going to stop the jerking. Are we live? Where's the live stream? Wow. Deacon Brett, you show up and the whole thing breaks.
Make sure Ingrid says make sure the device is plugged in. What device?
Which device?
Okay, let's turn this volume off.
Maybe audio is also cutting in and out.
Flicking here also. Make sure the device is plugged in. It is. I did. Let's see. I'm going to go play around with it a little bit. You guys keep up a good conversation.
Well, the audio apparently is going in and out as well.
It's Deacon Brett's fault. This never happened before he was here. What is wrong with this? Is the audio going in and out? Is it still a problem? Is it still flicking? Why is it flicking? So in watching it on my phone, it's not flicking the same way as watching what we're doing there. It's still a little jerky. Actually, I just completely disappeared. Did something help?
Now we're fine.
Morning, Kelly.
Maybe you just needed to build up the bandwidth. Okay, Ingrid says it's good now.
Okay,
Okay,
we
good.
can hear you, see you just fine. Are we still flicking on our screen? Doesn't matter. Okay. My coffee is warmed up also.
This is exhausting.
Oh, that was too much work.
Wow.
So much work on a Sunday morning.
No, we like to do this high-tech production here that's refined to the degree.
Audio is okay. Somebody was saying it's going to be a lesser quality here because we're farther from the Wi-Fi, probably the router or whatever.
Really?
And talk towards the camera.
Talk towards the camera.
Talk towards the camera.
Nobody's allowed to talk toward me. I'm sitting in the back. If you can all see, I'm at least 6 feet away. It turns out a triangle is the easiest way to do this. But if either of them ever look at me to talk, you'll not hear them.
And if it was lean in towards each other, we're going to be within 6 feet, so don't lean.
No leaning.
Audio is really bad right now.
Oh, gosh.
We're just going to have to shout the whole time.
Would it make sense to switch? Start messing with technology.
I got people who say they can see and hear just fine. It's clear here.
That's what we want here.
pretty fine from my end. Possible weaker Wi-Fi. We can hear you just fine.
Good.
Yeah, most of the comments. Oh, wait, audio bad now. There's one. Now I'm really clicking audio, so it's going back and forth.
Ours
Double
is
audio. Sound is glitching. Yeah, I have no idea what to do about that.
Any suggestions out there from anyone?
Audio is really bumpy. We're looking for suggestions. Device is definitely plugged in. Audio is apparently flickering. The video was flickering earlier.
But it isn't now. We're on our screen at least.
So the video is good now, the audio not so much. Is there something metallic near the camera? No?
We're asking if we have an Ethernet.
Ethernet cable here.
There's an Ethernet port probably over here for the computer.
I don't have the adapter I need for that. I can't plug in Ethernet to this device. Oh, just terrible. I mean, we had a good, so what did we say, 5 weeks?
Yeah.
Of coffee and broccoli without these problems, and then as soon as we made Deacon bread, this happens.
How are we doing now? Anyone sound working all right out there, folks? How bad is it? Can we proceed, or should we try a different location altogether?
We could try going back to Father Dave's office.
We can't.
I'd end up sitting off camera.
If it's not working at all, move. Someone give us an update if you think video or audio.
Oh, hey, I just got the video is bad now. Audio's still bad. It's just bad.
All right, we're going to move.
We're going to move, you
We're
guys.
going to move. Sorry, hang in there.
Sit with us. We're going to be moving. We're going to keep the live stream going the entire time we're moving.
We'll be back. We'll be back.
Not bad. I'm just going to walk with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you guys do?
Just go take up your positions in the office.
You want to hear anything?
No.
Okay.
All right, folks.
See you soon.
Actually, I take back. Yes. My books. Don't worry about it. I got it. You got it. Well, I'm still with you. You can still hear me talking as we walk through the office. I should probably bring power cables to ensure that it's still plugged in once we get up there. But stay with us, and hopefully the problem was the location that we're at. Here we go. Touring the office. Tour of the office. Tour of the office. Here is the kitchen. It's a nice kitchen. Now we're walking through this way. Here we go. Here we go. On our way to Father Dave's office. There's Deacon Brett's office. What a mess. There's a chair where Hobbs sits. Hobbs is so cute. And then we're back in here. Let's put this down and then try to get the distance right.
You want down that low?
Yes, it was down this low when we were doing it before. I got to prop it up on the book. But I'm going to bring it closer so that you can get the two of you in camera angle pretty well. I don't see any of us. There's what I think right here. Can you see yourself?
I can see myself.
How does that look?
Guys, it's easy peasy.
There we go. We've relocated.
All right, everybody hear us? And you're not even plugged in yet.
Yeah, I should plug it back in just to make sure it doesn't die on us or anything. Can you guys hear us? I'm not actually looking at comments. Are you looking at comments?
I'm actually, it's more, people are more text messaging me.
So much for the good conversation there just to keep up. Good on my card. Good on my end. We can hear you loud and clear.
Loud and clear. All right, Ingrid, can you, you're kind of keeping in touch with us on this. Can you hear us now?
What are you saying? The audio is bad, but
She was saying too many devices connected to Wi-Fi. I'm turning mine off.
Oh, that might be it. It might be that Deacon Brett was fighting with the Wi-Fi.
Probably. I get priority
We were streaming video at the same time I was streaming video, and we were uploading.
You expected me to just sit there and do
I knew the entire thing was your
I don't
fault.
want backlog of YouTube videos that I have to watch.
But you weren't even watching our stream. You were just watching you.
Well, you know.
Okay.
Kids in school.
How are we doing now, everybody?
So,
If you have comments, text Father Hans or message him, not me.
wow, yeah. Yeah, because Deacon Brett's not reading anything.
I'm not reading now.
We can refund part of your subscription fee if you pay for the full hour, because you're not going to get a full hour out of this.
Oh, you're getting a full hour of entertainment, though. This has got to be entertaining.
It's got to be eye rolling.
Okay, so, video's good. I have no idea at what point these do the unit drop at some point, maybe? No. Let's see. Okay.
I think we're up and rolling.
We're up and rolling, but I at some point lost the comment stream up to a certain point, so I have nothing before a certain point. And I missed a bunch of questions. I'm sorry, I don't have them. They're not here. Still bad stinks. Have you tried muting the speaker?
I think we're not live streaming masses.
So, sound is cutting in and out. Audio still starts to suggest you end this video and start a new live stream. I think we're going to go with that option. So, everybody watching us right now, we are about to kill this live stream and start a new one, and hopefully it works better. So, stay with us, look for the new stream. It should be starting soon. Hello again. Is it better this time?
Flickering on the little screen.
Flickering on the little screen again?
Now we're out.
What do you mean out?
Okay. Getting any comments yet? No.
Well, I gotta go find the video again, because it's a new video. Let's see. Pages. Let's go to our page.
Guys, you're doing this with Mass.
Erica says so much better.
Oh.
So apparently it's good so far.
Starting to get a lot of comments. I don't know what people are saying. I have my glasses on.
I can get up closer to read them here. Yes, better. Sounds okay. Sounds great so far. All right, that's 5 positives.
So much better.
I think we're in business.
Okay. I'm gonna try to find the stream on my phone, and you guys can discuss.
So I thought we'd begin by having Deacon Brett give us just a very brief recap of his homily, so we could talk about that a little bit, have a chance to do some comments about that or explanations with that. So tell us again what you talked about.
Good morning, everybody. So I was mostly playing with the Emmaus story, as you might remember, and I was just noticing how the disciples rode there to Emmaus missed what was right in front of them, which was the presence of the Lord right there, right in their midst. And just thinking how common that is for us as well. It's so easy to get caught in lots of distractions. I mean, it could be our worries about the future. It could be our regrets about what we've lost. It could even be, and as Father Davis talked about before, just sort of just giving in kind of self-indulgences that just kind of somehow prevent us from seeing the presence of the Lord in our life. So what I was trying to do is to urge us all to remember that the Lord is right here in the midst of all of this, and eager to walk with us and to support us and strengthen us. So that was the message for the most part.
No, I think it's a really good message because, as you said, it's so easy, especially if we watch much news, to just get caught up in the twirl of anxiety that builds. I brought a visual along for us today. Came through this morning on my screen. I'm going to bring this up close enough. I think you can see it. I'm trying to monitor it as we go here. Can you read that? How's that? Can you read it, Father Hans, from where you're at?
I'm not even seeing that on my screen. I'm so far behind.
Ah.
So the reality is the video that you're watching is several seconds behind what is actually happening in the office. So just go with it.
All right. So it says, what can we do about living in fear? The guy's watching TV, and then the next caption, he clicks off. TV turns off. That's one way we can avoid living in fear, is just cutting back on the news, the amount of news we watch, because
Isn't that true?
Boy, it just builds into the hype. There's that one big billboard. When you come in, you probably see it there on the one that changes pictures all the time.
Yeah.
And what did I see coming back on Friday? It said, teenagers are dying. Stay home, save lives. I mean, all right, I understand. But that's pretty extreme. I mean, it just kind of makes you want to clinch again, like, oh, gee.
No, I find it's easy to just get lost in kind of clicking from story to story to story to story. And, I appreciate news and the place of news, but it's, at the end of the day, I have to remind myself they're there to attract eyeballs as well. So the more extremely you can portray something, the more attention it's going to get. So I'm not trying to deny the seriousness of all of this, but it's easy to kind of just lose perspective. So I've had to limit myself.
And I'm reminding myself that we have so little control over so much of this other than our own behavior, which is part of staying in the present also. I've been using the Serenity Prayer a lot lately. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And realizing that most of the stuff about reopening our society or even the church is not in our control. It's handled at a level really that we have very little influence over. But what we do have influence over is the choices we're making right now, both with the social distancing and our own staying centered and focused on God. However we find it meaningful to do that, that is within our control. Anything you want to add on that, Father Hans, even though you're off screen?
I'm off screen. I'm paying attention to comments.
All right.
I've gotten so much better over the past 4 weeks at both listening to you while reading comments, but I'm still not good at it.
You've never listened well to me.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I'm kidding.
I really did appreciate that cartoon of turning off the television. I don't find myself living in fear, but I'm also not watching the television. And anytime I talk to people who are, and my sister sent me a video of just one interview, and I was like, why am I watching this? This is just making me angry, and it's not helpful at all with anything. So I think that is a great idea. Just turn it off.
Or
It's not helpful.
Yeah, limit the amount of time, just say. So I'm now I'll watch the local news 2 nights a week, and I'll watch national news 1 night a week. That's in national news, I'll do 10 minutes because it's just the very beginning. That's all I need to hear. So that seems to work for me. I've got another cartoon for you. This is about what we can control and what. Let's see if I get this. We can read it. Can you read that?
Yeah, that's good.
So it's things I can control, things I can't control. I don't know what's the lower.
Things I worry about.
Yeah, there you go.
Things that can happen. Things that do happen.
Yeah. So the reality is, again, that's where the fear gets building again. Have you seen that?
I have seen this one. I've heard lots of comments on this one. Actually, a number of preachers have remarked on the fact that 99% of what we worry about doesn't actually happen anyway, but we sure invest a lot of energy and time in it.
What's the great Mark Twain quote about that? I've had many awful things happen in my life, some of which actually happened.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's not the first part I didn't get quite right.
Yeah.
I think about something that one of the amazing parish people was saying. The area of influence that we have right now is much smaller than it is, and our area of concern is much bigger. And that we need to do it. It's a bad combo, but bringing that concern to where we actually have things that we can do stuff about and paying more attention to what we can actually do is helpful.
One I find myself using a lot with spiritual direction is, remember that God's in the situation, not in the imagination. It's easy to get lost in our fears and in our anxieties, forgetting that, God's right here. This is where God is, and it doesn't help to allow myself to kind of run away with my fears or anxieties, and as you say, most of which are never going to happen anyway. So anyway.
What was your homework line you gave us?
Oh, what was my homework line? Jesus, help me to give me the grace to hear your voice.
Yeah. So quiet down a little bit, take some time, take a deep breath, disengage from the fears for a little bit, and see what's right in front of us.
Yeah. And it's funny how when you do that, you start to notice little things and just maybe appreciate them more. I was stopping to get coffee on the way into work the other day, and just, the person in front of me, as I'm sure many of you have experienced, just paid for my coffee. And it's like, oh, what a great, it's just, it's a little blessing in the day. And just nice to be able to appreciate that rather than be so focused on what I need to do or what's going to happen or what am I worried about, and not even appreciate the fact that somebody made such a nice gesture. So anyway, I just have started trying to look for stuff like that in my day.
And hopefully be that kind of stuff for others too.
Absolutely.
I think I mentioned before in one of my homilies, when I was on sabbatical once, I was all alone for 4 months. And one of the things I was praying each day is, give us this day our daily bread, right out of the Our Father. But at the end of the day, trying to look specifically for the ways God had provided daily bread for me, both emotionally and spiritually and physically.
Yeah.
But I kind of morphed that about halfway through and helped me to be daily bread for others, and looking for ways I could be daily bread and help just be a part of other people's sustenance during the day. So we can all be that every day. And that's very simple. That's right in front of us every day.
What do you got, Hans?
Okay, here's some questions. We got questions coming in. Also, guys, send specific questions for Deacon Brett, because we've got him. Let's ask him stuff. Laura Rule, question: was the spiritual communion prayer created just for this crisis, or is it something that has been around?
That's been around for centuries. That particular one has been around since, who did, was that?
Liguori.
Yeah,
Alphonsus
Alphonsus Liguori.
Liguori.
And he was what, 16th, 17th century?
I think
Something
he was
that.
like 18th.
Was he
century.
18th?
Well,
Okay.
okay.
But there's a variety of other spiritual communion prayers that I found. I was looking for something for children specifically. Didn't find something for children, but I found some other versions of it.
Yeah, not to downplay the importance and the value of communion, but I think it's easy for us to forget that for centuries it was not the norm that people receive communion every week the way we're able to. Little acts like that of spiritual communion, finding the Lord in other ways, is very important.
Gary Johnson has a question for you, Father Dave. You've talked quite a bit about growing up, which was a while ago, the olden days. Did you use slate tablets and chalk in school? I just repeat the question just as I'm not asking.
Gary and I are classmates, so yes, we did use slate and chalk. That's exactly what chalkboards were. Wow, boy.
Okay, Heidi Zeckley asks, where's the broccoli?
It's dead.
Heidi, the broccoli is outside the door right now because it smells so incredibly foul. It's bad. It's molding. It's the water that it was in is cloudy. It's just gross. I was going to bring it on camera today, but we are no longer next to that door, and I'm not going to go get it. It's bad.
The whole office smelled like it. It was really bad. I thought Father Hans had left his socks or something in his office because something was stinking the whole place up. Or that he'd quit bathing during the. But anyway, it was just the broccoli.
Sorry, Father.
I mean, I just shrugged my shoulders and nobody can see me. So, okay, here's a question from Sue Ann. Is Mary Magdalene and Mary Magdala the same person?
Yes.
Why the difference in the name?
I don't know. A different translation. It's both the same person. It's just a different form of the name. What would be another example of that? Can you think of another example from the gospel?
I'm sure there are some.
There's one that's jumping to my mind. The name Jesus, there's a lot of forms of it. Sometimes it's Joseph, and it's the same name as the name Joshua. It's just a different way of translating it.
Right.
What about Jude and Thaddeus and some of those from the Apostles?
Yeah, Thaddeus and Jude are the same person. I don't know if that's a different translation or just a different way of calling him.
I won't speak very well to this, but maybe some of you who are linguists, some languages, Latin I know for sure, and Greek have, I think it's called declension. So the word, instead of indicating a relationship between two words, so for the possessive, we would say Father Dave's cup or the cup of Father Dave, but in Latin, you can signify that just by the way you change the suffix. And I suspect Greek works the same way. So I think sometimes you pick that up as well. Is it, Mary of Magdala or Mary the Magdalene or anyway, same person.
Question from Cynthia. Adoration helps a lot. Do you have hints and prayers that may help us sit with God? Apparently they don't.
No, it's sure easy to drift off into, spiral away into other kind of thinking. So everything that I've always practiced is we just need to gently call yourself back, because that's just reality. We're human beings. I haven't sprouted wings or a halo yet, so sometimes I can have 20 seconds of focus.
20 whole seconds?
20 seconds, sometimes not.
I heard a great story of
That's
some
pretty good for
saint
you, Tyler.
was riding his horse down the road, and a beggar came up to him. Was like, no, I gotta get this story right. No, I don't. Forget the details. Anyway, the saint said to the beggar, the saint would have just given the stuff to the beggar.
You're not telling this very
Okay, forget the story. Somebody said to somebody, it doesn't matter who was who, if you can pray the Our Father without being distracted for the entire way through the Our Father, I'll give you my horse.
Wow.
And so the man said, Our Father who art in heaven, does that come with the saddle?
Yes.
No, I've tried that. It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
I usually start with something concrete. So whether it's one of the readings for the day, or I don't know, it could be the rosary, or sometimes I just talk to the Lord too about what's going on. But and then I just kind of wait to see what comes up. Maybe I'll be praying a mystery of the rosary, and it'll connect to something going on in my life, a relationship or a struggle that I'm having, or somebody that I need to pray for. And then I'll just kind of go with that, and just allow the Spirit to sort of guide where the prayer goes. And then when that seems to run out of steam, then I can kind of come back to whatever it was that I was praying, the passage or the rosary, whatever it was. That's how I approach it. And then go for as long as I have.
Yep. Keep it gentle. I'm glad that Jesus understands our humanity.
Sure.
So we're not going to be anything other than human.
Deacon Brett Maria Menor wants to know, who is the author of the tree reflection? The tree evening.
Oh, that I did the other day on my Friday reflection? That's
Yeah.
Thomas Merton, actually, believe it or not. So
Thomas
Merton was the author of that.
And then Sue Ann would like to know, how many walks a day is Hobbs getting?
If he's lucky, he still gets one. And then he usually gets really kind of peppy around bedtime. I don't know why he does this, but every night, right when I'm going to bed, that's when he gets his toy and decides it's time to play. So.
Okay, here's a question. What is the best or most challenging thing about being a priest or a deacon? The best, most challenging thing. One or the other, or maybe both.
It's a good question. Good question. I find it immensely satisfying knowing that I get to spend a good chunk of my day talking with people or interacting about things that have a lot of importance, and there's something meaningful about that, dealing with what counts most in life, and doing God talk with people, stuff that's kind of awkward to happen in other conversations, but is normal in the kind of interaction that we do as clergy. So I find that really satisfying. At the end of every day, I give thanks for that.
Yeah, I find that very humbling. I think that's the most humbling part for me about being a deacon, is just the trust that people invest in being willing to talk about some of these really difficult parts of their lives. That's what I find to be maybe the best and most humbling part of being a deacon.
What would you add to that, Father Hans, off camera?
Off camera, I would add that the best part for me is I probably celebrating reconciliation for that same reason. The amount of trust, the amount of actual relationship there to know somebody so well and have them willing to share so deeply with me. It's incredible to be trusted like that.
What's the challenge part of it?
I don't know if it's the most challenging. One of the things that I find personally challenging, though, is, and there's a balance here, I know, but it's somehow people wanting to put you on a pedestal, and so they're afraid to just speak bluntly, right? Or they apologize right away if they've said something, and there's a cuss word or something. And it's just like, if you guys were around the office, you would know that we interact very much probably like you do. So it's very free flowing and very real. So I understand do you know what I'm talking about?
It's kind of a part of a respect, I guess, but an overplayed respect or a respect that.
So I would say, like, I've had people, drop a cuss word in front of me and they're like, "Oh, sorry, Father." And I'm like, "Why are you apologizing to me?
Right.
It didn't hurt me."
Yeah.
And I think I'm afraid that there's a certain amount of fakeness that people might put on, like putting on a face rather than being their real self around me.
Yeah.
That concerns me sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes there are clerics, I'd say, who probably who cultivate that kind of a very pious sort of air where, they want to be treated differently. But
I think that's where we get in trouble with our praying also, is if we think that in front of God or before God, we need to sanitize our prayers. And if we're really disgusted with something or really afraid of something, we need to express that, or our prayer really isn't doing much. It needs to be the real us right now, coming before the Lord.
Question: what will be the criteria for gathering together again? Will people be 6 feet apart?
Good question.
That's a good question.
We're all eager to know. Yeah, it'll be complicated, won't it? We've been talking about this too. In all likelihood, we will have to come back in stages. So we won't all be able to come back at once, obviously. And will that require? My guess is it'll require some distancing. Will we all have to wear masks? I don't know. We're all as eager to hear as you are, but my guess is we're not going to be able to kind of just have masks like we used to have it for quite a bit yet. What do you think?
We've had a lot of discussion here and even at the diocesan level on what it's going to mean, especially for parishes our size, to begin this re-entry process. So we're playing with some different ideas, but if phase 2 of the governor's plan, probably late May, would be gatherings up to 50 people, that's going to be really hard for us here. How do we do increments of 50? Father Hans is playing around with a lottery system, and we're thinking of having bouncers outside so we can forcefully remove people who didn't win the lottery to come to Mass. I'm thinking a priority needs to go towards our First Communion kids, get them somehow engaged, and our RCIA folks. We have 27 people who are fully ready to receive the sacraments in the Catholic Church. I don't want to put them off. But how we deal with this as it rolls on and on, I don't know. So we're looking at ideas. I know, thankfully, it's not just us, but we're trying to be creative in our own thinking on how we can do this. Any of you want to be bouncers? You get to carry it. You need to have a weapon with you.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea how it might shift, I don't know if this would work here or not. I know one of the things the Archbishop has sort of played with is the idea of maybe keeping the suspension of, Sunday is the primary day of worship, just keeping that suspended now and just allowing people to come maybe on different days of the week. Maybe that would allow more people to come to Mass at least once a week. Who knows? I don't know, but maybe that's a piece of the solution. We'll have to see.
We were adding up, with the 50 limitation.
Yeah,
even if we had 20 Masses a week, that gets a third of our parish through each week.
Right.
No,
I think the video option is going to have to remain for a while.
Yeah, we're going to keep this going. So those of you who like your front row seats in your living room, you got them for a while.
Kelly Davenport says, thank you to Father Dave for her first Mass during Lent. The homily on forgiveness was really great.
Good. Thanks, thanks for remembering.
Heidi Zeckley says that if there was Catholic Jeopardy, Brett, you would rock it. So good for you. Heidi Zeckley also can see the cat piano because this camera has a wider angle and it's picking up the cat piano in the distance.
Wow.
Rosemary Shaw says, what are your hidden talents besides cat piano playing?
I've got one.
What's your hidden talent, Father?
I have been pooped on by birds more than anyone I've ever talked to.
That's a talent?
Sure.
It's a gift.
I think so. It's a unique quality that I have.
Wow.
So I'm kind of proud of that.
Wow.
I once got a full head-on splat from a pelican. Do you know what pelicans eat? I mean, rotten food and fish. Do you know what this smell? 3 or 4 showers after, I could still smell it.
Wow.
That was bad.
Father.
That was bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's hidden or not, and you'd have to ask my wife and my kids if it's actually even considered a talent. But I actually like to cook. Father Hans and I and Father were just talking about a new dish, an Italian dish that I came across today, and I was asking Father Hans if he ever had it, and so I kind of like to play around with new recipes and adapt them, and that's one of the things that I guess it's relatively hidden.
Why don't you try it if you're at work?
Yeah,
Make
yeah,
it less hidden here at work. Yeah.
They're called hidden talents for a reason. It's because they're hidden. If I told you what they were, they would no longer be hidden. So they're just going to stay that way. Is there still a way to put persons that we would like the parish to pray for, like we did on the prayer sheet? We have like a prayer list that's going on. And how do we get people on there?
Yeah.
Well, we've got the prayer chain yet. If
Right,
you simply email into the office, we'll get you on there. Yeah, and that's been an active list for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I guess I would reiterate what I said last week. If there's somebody you think would benefit from a more personal contact outreach, Erin is doing a great job with her homebound ministers and kind of keeping a list going of folks who need to be checked in with. So that's another option for us.
This is from Carlos Romo for Deacon Brent. Would you do an analysis between Cleophas' encounter with Jesus and one of encountering someone who has recovered from the coronavirus?
Oh, God. On the spot.
How will we treat that person? Will we stay away from them? Would we ever see them the same as before they got the virus? On the spot analysis. Go.
Talk. I have to think.
Let's get Carlos to answer his own question.
Yeah, what do you think, Carlos?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
The comment he'd be answering like way down in the comments.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've never seen anything.
That's too hard. Carlos, do an essay on that and send it in to us, please.
There's a lot of questions like what are people who've recovered from the coronavirus, are they able to get it again, or can they now that's still very unclear.
Maybe next week we could bring our medical advisor in here too and pretend we're Channel 2 News.
Do we have a medical expert?
Everyone does.
Everyone does.
Everyone.
I heard that Facebook was granting medical doctorates to everyone on Facebook, so that any advice you get on Facebook is medical expert.
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I heard. Oh boy. Do you have a favorite prayer directed to Jesus? The Our Father is a great prayer directed to Father. Hail Mary is to Mary. Do you have a favorite prayer directed to Jesus?
I find myself, I use a lot just the Jesus prayer because it's short and it's simple and it's easy to use. If I can use it if I'm having a conversation, if I'm working in the yard, if I'm doing my work at my computer, it's kind of tiny moments of frustration or whatever. It's just, Lord Jesus, have mercy on me. And mercy, not just in the sense of forgiveness, but mercy in the sense of grace, compassion, kindness. That's what I use a lot.
I use that. I use Jesus, I belong to you. I like that word belong. It has a rich connotation for me. So just as a reminder of my fundamental foundation, I guess, is I belong to Jesus.
Yeah, Father Hans, at the beginning of Lent, he talked about formal prayers. That was your homily, right? Formal prayers. And I think those just brief little prayers are really powerful. They just have a way of, I find, derailing all the other kinds of thoughts that kind of can come to sort of dominate my mind. Like, I can't believe what a jerk Father Dave is, and why did he say that to me? And oh my God. So I think just having those little prayers that can kind of come back and say, okay, Lord Jesus, have mercy on me. Or when I get caught up in, whatever it might be, worrying or whatever it is, temptation, just having something like that to fall back on. I think it has a way of kind of shaping our minds and hearts and directing our attention back to the Lord. I find it helps a lot.
What I use a lot here at the office is Jesus, have mercy on Brett.
Question from Sue Ann. When the new church year starts, is there a set rotation of the Gospels for the year? For example, John or Mark readings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good question, Sue Ann. Yeah, so I don't know, you may have heard that there's for the Sunday readings, there's a year A, B, and C, which roughly corresponds to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We should have just called it that, I think. But so we, during those, just year A, we focus on the Gospel of Matthew, year B, Mark, and then year C, Luke. John gets used every year, especially during the seasons of Lent and Easter, and then also in the Christmas season as well. So.
Is First Communion next week postponed?
Yeah.
Very definitely.
No, we'll have 3,000, 4,000 people here next weekend for First Communion. We'll be on the news.
Willow's having some great ideas for mass attendance. First off, she's laughing at the lottery idea. But then she has auction your seat off for a good cause.
I was telling Father Hans, if he were to just kind of use the lottery and send people tickets, people could scalp them and make a little bit of extra money, and
Would the bouncers be armed with holy water?
Ooh.
Super soakers. Okay. And yeah, here's a comment. The vulnerable may need to stay home longer.
That's true.
No, some people just won't be comfortable coming, knowing that even with 50 people in there, and that's going to have to be all right for a while too. So it's going to. I don't know what our new normal will look like.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll be selling off our church buildings and our schools, and we just won't need these public gathering places anymore.
Turn to home churches or whatever there is in the early church.
Everyone will homeschool and home church,
Yeah.
and
I'm thinking giant outdoor masses. Just get a huge field where everyone can spread out on their own picnic blanket.
what would we have nearby that would allow that to happen?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that.
The Nike campus. We'll take over Nike on Sundays.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
yeah, it's close by.
Okay, here's a question for Deacon Brett. What's your favorite recipe website? Do you have one?
I don't have a favorite site. I look at all recipes a lot when I'm looking for something. That seems to be a pretty good one. Epicurious, I don't look at as much, but sometimes I just Google search, to be honest.
Okay. Is it true that if a deacon's wife dies, he cannot marry? If so, why is that a rule?
Yeah, in general, that's true, yes. So the idea is that, and I don't know if I can explain the why of this, maybe you guys know this is better than I do, but once you're ordained, you're not supposed to marry once you're ordained. So if you're married before you're ordained, that's permissible, but you're not supposed to be married after you're ordained. So the Orthodox, they follow that same discipline, which is why you'll see sometimes guys waiting to be ordained in the Orthodox tradition until they're actually ordained. I suppose in one sense it's good. I mean, I don't know if we want priests or ordained people out there on the market.
This created humorous situations when I was in seminary with people who were Orthodox or Eastern Catholics, where you can be married and be a priest.
Yeah.
Because often they would get to the end of their studies and then they would take a break to go find a wife because they wanted to be married before they were ordained because they couldn't get married after they were ordained.
Who makes these rules?
Well, what I found is that sometimes even things that sound silly to us, they may be, and maybe some of them get dated, but there's almost always a good historical reason for them. The church is 2,000 years old and has seen everything. So usually if there's a rule, there's a reason behind it. The one exception I know to the ordained can't marry rule is if a deacon has, I think the phrase is children of a tender age, so very young children, and would need help in raising those children, then I believe you can ask your bishop for permission to be married. So, but that's the only exception I know.
Helen Hamilton is insulting my baking with no cause. She says, Father Hans has no talent for lemon meringue pie. Helen, you can't even know that. I haven't even made a lemon meringue pie.
That's true, Helen. We were asking him to sort of put his money where his mouth was. I have yet to see a lemon meringue pie here from Father Hans in the office.
I have realized that if I make one, I'll have to make 50, and so I just haven't made the first.
Would that be a bad thing?
Yes.
Why is it 50? I know. Why not one?
Who am I going to with? This is like the lemon meringue pie lottery. Like how many people? Who
one
gets
for
it?
me, one for Father Dave.
No, you lock the door here and we'll eat it here at the staff.
No.
Not going to happen. Same with
If
your
I do
pasta.
it, somebody's going to be angry. From Carlos again. Father Dave, how are collections going? And should you mention direct deposit as a way to being sure that our expenses continue to be met? Thanks.
Thanks for the plug for us. We're doing all right, thanks to generosity from many of you. Yes, if you can set up any kind of an auto pay thing, obviously that makes funds continue to come in and we'll be able to keep the computer running for you. But mostly we just want to say thanks because the parish has been very generous and we're doing all right. We're doing, I think, probably better than some parishes that are in dire circumstances. We also were able to set aside enough reserve that we're able to operate on our reserves for 6 months pretty comfortably. So yes, thanks, Carlos. But that's not front and center on our mind. Like, God, we got to get more money. How are we going to do this?
Yeah, no, I feel for some of the small parishes, it'd be a real struggle to reopen.
Here's a question from Elijah Shaw. Do any of you guys know how to play chess, or have any of you played chess before? I know how to play. I have not studied the strategy at all. I would not be very good.
I'm the same way. I've played, but I'm not very good. I haven't gotten good at it. In fact, I remember several years ago, my nephew was on the chess club in high school, and so he asked me if I wanted to play, and I thought, oh, sure. He had me in checkmate, and I kid you not, I think it was 4 moves.
Wow.
So.
That'd be Elijah. Elijah, you're so good at that I wouldn't come close to a chessboard with you.
Linda Nicolo says Tim Timmons would make a great bouncer.
Yes.
You can't come in, but here's a Tootsie.
That's
fantastic.
Good job.
Yes.
Yes. That's the kind of bouncer I would want.
Yeah, he'd be great.
Absolutely.
Okay, question for Deacon Brett. Tips on how to pray with your spouse.
Ooh, it's different to pray with another person than it is to pray on your own. I think you just need to let go of the fact that this is going to be a hugely meaningful, quiet, meditative kind of prayer, and just accept that group prayer works differently. I don't know. Sometimes when Teresa and I pray together, it's pretty formal, actually. There's not a whole lot of kind of heavy, deep, and real conversation that goes on either between she and I or between me and God, but it's just praying the prayers and doing it together and trusting there's some grace there. Yeah, I don't know. When you guys pray together sometimes, what do you find?
We do pretty formal prayer when we're praying together. And then with that, intentions along with that, that's more personal, I guess, at that point.
Sure.
I don't know of anyone who's able to just do some kind of spontaneous, really personalized prayer day after day after day after day with someone else, right, without it eventually becoming kind of rote or kind of routine again. So, right. I've had prayer partners that I pray with every day, and although you can be creative about intentions, there's a certain point where you know each other pretty well and you know each other's intentions pretty well. Right.
So this was a question at the end of last week. What's the divine office? That came up, and then a follow-up: do Jesuits pray the divine office?
Yes.
Yes, they do. What is it?
So this could be basically the divine office is an organized way of praying the Psalms. That's what it is in its essence. So the church has prayed the Psalms going all the way back to the time of Jesus, and you probably know ancient Jews prayed them daily. So it's just an organized way of praying the Psalms. The Psalms have been called sort of the school of prayer for the church, and I find it powerful to think Jesus himself would have prayed the Psalms every day. Those are the prayers that would have shaped his mind and heart, and I'm praying those same words. So I find that powerful. So everybody who's ordained, it takes on a promise as well to pray for the church and the world. And one of the chief ways that happens is through the divine office, or sometimes it's called the Liturgy of the Hours. Monks do the same thing, religious sisters and brothers. What would you guys add to that?
No, it's a required part of our daily life.
Yeah.
The rhythm of it, I think, grows over the years. It was more foreign to me. We were praying it when I was in the seminary, when I was a priest and not in community, not with a group of other people praying it together. It became a different kind of a prayer. It was more of a probably not the way it's really intended to be. But as a result of all of that, so I guess I prayed over 40 years. I've done the Psalms out of the Liturgy of the Hours every day. So there's a certain rhythm that kind of just becomes familiar and soothing and nurturing. as you said in your homily at the beginning of Lent, it teaches us, like a little child, it teaches us how to express ourselves to God.
Yeah.
So,
It helps us enter, I think, into the whatever season we're in the church year. I think you'll see that the Liturgy of the Hours kind of tailors itself to the seasons. What would you say, Father Hans?
One of the things that I learned in my study of liturgy, looking at the Vatican Council documents, they recommend like making the Divine Office, the Liturgy of the Hours, more accessible for the laity, because it sort of over the years became like the possession of the clergy because they were the only ones who were praying it, and it was entirely in Latin, and so you had to have a certain amount of education. But the council really wanted to get back to where the church as a whole was praying the Psalms regularly, and it really is very accessible. Like, I pray on my phone all the time using the iBreviary app.
Right.
Anybody can pray this. It's the prayer of the church. It's just a great way to pray. And as Father Dave was saying, when we pray together, we'll often do one of the liturgies of the Divine Office, and then we'll include specific prayer intentions at the time set aside for that. So it has that combination of formal prayer with the opportunity to add some personal prayer in.
So with the Liturgy Hours, the way it's structured, there's morning prayer, there's evening prayer, and then those are the sort of the major hours, they're called. And then there are several other hours over the course of the day and even in the night that if you were, say, like a monk or a religious sister, you might pray all of them. Most priests, deacons would pray morning prayer, evening prayer, and then what is it, off the office of readings, maybe night prayer. But you know what, I think for lay people, what I always tell folks who get interested is that you don't feel like you have to pray the whole thing. Magnificat is a great adaptation of the Liturgy of the Hours, of the Divine Office, and they kind of shorten it, make it usable for people, and put in a nice little reflection usually. So it's a nice way. I find it just a
we have some of our young people that have started using it in our school now.
Yeah.
Some of the kids who have been involved in Youth for Christ started praying it on their phones during their lunch break here at recess. That's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
More power to you. So.
Okay, another question left over from last week. Why do we use the Nicene Creed during Mass instead of the Apostles' Creed? What is the difference between the two, aside from the obvious words and length and so forth?
Wow. But we can use either one.
Right.
Correct. So we have the option of doing either one.
Correct.
They came from different centuries.
Yeah, the Apostles' Creed is much earlier than the Nicene Creed. So the Nicene Creed was formulated based on the Apostles' Creed, but you'll note if you compare the two, it's a lot more detailed, especially around our understanding of who Jesus is and the Trinity. So that was formulated in response to some of the early heresies that the church was struggling with around, is Jesus fully human? Is he fully God? Is he half and half? What does it mean to say that we worship one God in three persons? So as the church kind of refined its understanding, that got reflected in the creeds. So the Nicene Creed came out of the Council of Nicaea, and I forget if that was 351 or 4 something, but 325 or 4. So anyway, Father is right. So the different periods in the church's history, the Apostles' Creed is earlier and simpler. The Nicene is a little bit later and more detailed.
Okay, back to the questions coming through. From Oliver Shaw, do we know who the other disciple with Cleopas was? Do we know what happened to them?
Some of you probably do. Cleopas is mentioned in one of Paul's letters. So there's some speculation, there's some possibility, I'm not sure this is more than a speculation, but possibly the person he was walking with was his wife. That's a possibility, or perhaps not. But I know he's mentioned in one of Paul's letters. I just don't recall which one right now. So.
Assuming he's the same as Clopas, the husband of one of the Marys who was at the cross, it's like, well, his wife was right there at the cross when Jesus died.
Yeah.
So, but I've never heard of anything about who the other one is.
Yeah.
Will we be both holding Mass and delivering Mass during the transition for those who don't wish to come to Mass initially or can't, and maybe even a little later on as well?
Yes. Yes. And our plan is to continue to be recording Masses even when we're back fully operating again.
Yeah.
Just because we have folks that have gotten tied in on this system that are either not able to come or they're not even in our area anymore, but want to stay connected with Holy Trinity. So very likely we've been looking at some different options for that. as you know, we started recording the homilies here 3-4 years ago. I've been really reluctant to do that as well, but I've been sold now on taping the Mass, video, recording it as well.
Important question. What is Father Dave eating?
None of your business.
There's some Reese's Pieces egg. These are, what does this say? Smoke and what? And break?
What?
Shake and break. These Reese's rattle. Why do your Reese's rattle?
I think if you rattle them too much, they might explode or something. I don't know.
The what's Father Dave eating question has been repeated multiple times.
I just want to say for the record.
There's a just make the pie, Father Hans. Make the pie.
Yes,
good.
please.
Suggesting that I make pies for next March 14th.
You know, guys, I have to say, and just come to Jesus moment here for Father Hans. I'm detecting a pattern here. So no lemon meringue pie. I know he promised me a maple bar if I came in
That's
today,
right.
and I
Really?
I don't see a maple bar
No
here.
maple bar.
So
I offered you a hard-boiled egg.
You did. God bless you. I was waiting because I thought he was going to have a maple bar. I didn't want to spoil my appetite.
This is kind of a bring your whatever you want to eat. I mean, that's the pattern of Father Hans.
Is there a video recording of me making that promise?
Oh, Father Hans.
If it wasn't taped, it never happened.
How are you ever going to be a pastor if you're not taking care of your employees?
I'm eating banana bread with chocolate chips in it. It is good.
Okay, question on the gospel. Why did the two, and Mary Magdalene also, not recognize Jesus? Why didn't they recognize Jesus? And then another question, did Jesus have to suffer to save us?
So I can start and you can jump right in, Father. I'm going to actually give you an answer that Chris Storm wrote about in the bulletin this week that I thought was really interesting and kind of connected to what I was saying, but I thought he gave an even more interesting take. There's a psychological phenomenon, I don't remember what it's called, but basically when we get so absorbed in something, we can miss what's right there in front of us. Maybe some of you have seen that there's a famous YouTube video where you're given a task. It's for example, to count. There's people who are dressed in all black and then all white, and they're bouncing a ball, and you have to count how many times the ball passes from this category to that category. And you're so focused on counting the passes that you, at the end of the video, they ask you, did you see the gorilla walk through? And almost everybody says, gorilla, what are you talking about? But if you go back, if you rewind and watch the video, sure enough, there's a guy in a gorilla suit who walks right through the middle, and most of us never see him. So I think that's probably, at least in part, the resurrection appearances are all very mysterious. But I think with Clopas and his companion, I think a lot of it is just they're so caught up in what they've lost that they forget to sort of see what's in front of them.
One more, Father Hans.
This is from Maria Menor, who is also eating a banana chocolate chip muffin and is very happy to know that you're eating something similar. I actually made it to the bottom of the comments, but I skipped over a couple questions to get there. Ramadan is presently being observed. Do you have any observances as to what we as Catholics can learn from that practice? More strict fasting? I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a certain
I have found it inspiring to listen to. I've listened to several Muslims talk about the power of the Ramadan fast. You probably know they fast from sun up till sundown, and it's a really strict fast. I don't even think they drink water. But they talk about the spiritual energy that develops, especially over the course of the month, which I've always found very inspiring. I just would put one caveat on that. I think just for us as Christians, we have to be careful of pride and all of that. When is something becoming more about ego? Look what I can do. Most of the spiritual masters that I know of in the Christian tradition would say, when you fast, but it's not about trying to sort of prove how strong you are. You have to be really careful of pride there. So, what do you think, Father Hans?
I used to play volleyball with a guy who would, be playing volleyball in the sand in 90-degree weather at the end of a day when he hadn't drunk any water all day.
Wow.
It's like, how are you doing this?
That's not even prudent, yeah.
But I guess he was so used to doing it that his body knew what to do and he was able to do it. But it was also towards the end of the day, and as soon as the sun went down, he would drink water. So he knew what he was doing. I think that there's a real, what's the word I'm looking for? Spiritual maturity, I guess, that goes with maintaining that sort of a fast. And there is, putting God ahead of all things food and water related, and being able to do that every day for a month, even if you're, making up for it by eating a lot at night. It's discipline, I guess, is what I would say. There's a lot of discipline, and we've talked in here before about, the word discipline means to learn, and it's learning to put God first.
I imagine there's something to just doing that as a community that's helpful as well.
Sure.
Yeah, knowing everyone else is doing it also makes it easier
Right,
to do.
kind of the way we all used to, Friday used to be a mandatory abstinence for everybody, and for Catholics anyway.
I'm getting hungry just talking about this.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot of food today, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, we always conclude with prayer. Would you like to lead us in a prayer, Brett, since you're with us today?
Let's pray in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Lord Jesus, as we go into this new week, we ask you to open our eyes that we might see your presence and your invitations in whatever comes our way this week, in the people that we meet, in our prayer, in the work that you give us to do, in our needs, whatever it is. We ask you please to help us to be sensitive to your presence, and help us to respond with generosity and courage and kindness and patience. We ask you to bless all of our loved ones, especially who might be vulnerable in this time, whatever way, whether worries about the future, about work, their kids, whatever it might be. And we ask you too to remember all those who are sick, especially at this time of the virus. Remember those who are suffering with that and their families, and all who are working to alleviate that. And we ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye, folks.